Good morning, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of the Duron Morning Show. Today is Monday, January 25th, 2021. I hope everybody had a great weekend. So, let's just jump right into it, honestly. There's been this huge debate on social media over the weekend. And honestly, it's been a debate for centuries, but just over the last couple of days, I've seen it trend 3-4 times. And not to completely switch topics, I think that there's something in the industry where that happens quite often, and I don't know what it is. Like, if you guys have been listening closely, there's a lot of songs about best friends right now. That's my best friend, or the bad baby, or whatever her name is, the Catch Me Outside girl, she has a song with best friends. Sweetie and Doja Cat has a song with best friends. Like, there's a whole thing going on about best friends. And why I say that is, as soon as one thing trended about colorism with Danny Lay, or the baby's new girlfriend, she made a song called Yellow Bone. And the whole world, the whole black community was up in arms with that. And the whole discussion about colorism started to make its head again. And then a couple days later, maybe if not the next day, I think it was just 2 or 3 days later, a video resurfaced of Rick Ross, The Dream, and someone else. They did a show, something kind of like, not exactly, but something kind of like Making the Band, how Diddy used to do, where they let artists perform and they say if they're going to sign them. Rick Ross had never signed a woman artist, so all these people were trying to be the first lady of MMG. So a light-skinned woman went to go do her performance with, and she remixed Aston Martin music. Before she sang it, or maybe it was after, she came and said, me and this other girl, we have the same beat, so I'm going to sing it better. I'm going to make sure I sing it better. And they said, who has the same beat? And then the light-skinned woman pointed to a dark-skinned woman. And they were like, all right, we'll see who does it better. And the light-skinned woman did a good job. She did okay. Like, it wasn't like the best thing I'd ever heard. And then the dark-skinned woman came up and she could really sing. But the difference was when the light-skinned woman went, the Rick Ross and The Dream, everyone was like, yo, you got a future in this. You're going to go crazy. It's the best decision you ever made in your life. When the dark-skinned woman went, they cut her off short after 10 seconds, and Rick Ross said, you got a unique voice, but this wasn't the way to do your platform. She sounded better than you. And everyone that has ears listened to that and said, that's just not true. Like, that, come on. That's just not true. She didn't sound better than her. So that brought up the discussion of colorism in the industry, and this woman made a tweet about it, which made it trend, and said, this is the industry in a nutshell. In a nutshell, this is how it works. I'm shining. You guys will understand, the ones that are watching the video at home. So that brought up the discussion of colorism in the industry and how it affects people getting their opportunities. And so, as I always do, because for those of you that don't know, when I think about what I'm going to talk about, I have tons of ideas in my head that I want to talk about, but I also want to talk about the things that are relevant going on right now. So if colorism is big right now, then that's what I'm going to talk about. So I started to do research, as I always do when I'm going to talk about these topics, and I just wanted to, obviously I know about colorism. I've heard stories about colorism. My own mother has told me stories about colorism in her life. She's not a dark-skinned woman, but I guess this is the best time to bring up, in this colorism debate, people don't even really do light skin, brown skin, caramel. It's just lights. If you have lighter skin, if you have darker skin. And before we even get into all that, I guess for a very beginner's guide 101, what is this colorism debate? Because how does colorism differentiate from racism, from like, what's the difference? You're not being a colorist if you're someone that's white and you're attacking a black person. That's racism. You guys are different races. Colorism is when people of the same ethnicity or of the same background, however their shade of their tones are different, their skin tones are different, when they start to be biased towards one another, or when they start to when certain not stigmatisms, but when certain stereotypes start to evolve around one shade being better than the other. Same thing about racism, one race being better than the other. So to give a few examples, or just to go into the little bit of a history lesson, where does this even come from? It kind of started in the black community, because it's not just the black community. It's in the black community, it's in the Latin community, it's in the Asian community. So where it started in the black community, you got to go back to slavery. During slave times, it obviously, because the ones that owned the slaves were white, they owned black slaves. So what the white slaves would do is Africans that had lighter skins were looked at as better because they were closer to white. So if you were light skinned, you didn't have to do the same task as someone that had darker skin. So for example, someone that had darker skin would have to be in the field for 10, 12, 16 hours all day, and they would have to pick in the field, whereas someone that has lighter skin, because just the way their tone was that they didn't even pick, they would be able to work inside the house. And when I was doing my research for this, I found out that there were even tests for this, and not only done by white people towards black people, but blacks done to themselves too. There were tests that would determine who got to work inside and who got to work outside. One being called the paper bag test, where they would get a regular brown paper bag, and if you were lighter than the brown paper bag, you got to work in the house. If you were darker than the brown paper bag, you had to work inside, or outside, excuse me. Darker outside, lighter inside. And obviously slavery went on for hundreds of years. So you can only imagine how that divided people. And on top of that, bigger than just, oh, you get to work inside and I have to work outside, like I'm sweaty and doing physical labor and you're just inside in the cool, not in the sun. What would happen is, while the darker skinned people were outside, the lighter skinned people, they had the opportunity to actually learn inside, because sometimes if the male of the home, if the master would leave for the day, sometimes the wife or their friends would come over and teach the slaves that were on the inside how to read, how to write. So what ended up happening is lighter skinned people, because they got that opportunity, they worked inside, they actually became more educated. And the darker skinned people that didn't get that, they weren't that educated. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they couldn't even speak that well. So it ended up becoming another stereotype or another stigmatism. And I don't think stigmatism is the right word. Isn't that something to do with your eye? Like you can't see, so you have astigmatism. So what ended up happening is another stereotype came about, saying that dark-skinned people were dumb and light-skinned people were smarter than them, which at the time, that was most likely true, because they didn't have the same opportunities for education. So take all that into consideration, and then like fast forward. You don't even have to go that far, but when nightclubs started to come about, they had similar tests, because like I said, the community was already so divided. Now when there started to be nightclubs or places that black people were allowed to go, they had the black people implemented their own test. Or even before I get there was another test, and this one I wasn't clear as if the slaves did this or if the masters did this. But there was another test called the comb test, where if you could get a comb and go through a slave's hair easier, then like if you got through their hair without like it knotting up, they were deemed better of some sort. Whereas if you tried to put a comb through their hair and it was knotty, they were deemed like raggedy and those types of, you know where I'm going. So once again, like I said, fast forward when there were nightclubs and places that they could go and have a good time, they also implemented more tests. Black people would do what they called the door test, and like I said, you guys can Google all this. I always encourage that. They would do the door test and paint the door a certain shade of brown. If you were lighter, you could get into the clubs. Lighter than the door, you could get into the clubs. If you were darker, you couldn't get in. And it was all about your blackness and who's better, and you know what I mean? So we have those same issues today is what I'm trying to say. Nothing has changed. And there have even been studies done now. And I wanted to read this. When I was doing the research yesterday, I couldn't believe that I even found this, because it doesn't even sound true. But there was this study done, and I want to read it word for word, so I'm just going to pull it up really quickly. But there was this study done that said, let me get to it. All right, it's right here. So first, I'm just going to read you guys the definition of how they do it, of how they say. So discrimination based on color, on skin color, also known as racism, is when it's done, like I said, from someone that's from white to black or from different shades. But colorism is when it's the same ethnicity or background, but there are cultural meanings that differ within the attached skin color. But like I said, let me read this. I wanted to read this because I didn't believe this when I read it. All right. So it says that, where'd it go? I highlighted it. Right here. Okay, criminal justice system. I can't find it, but basically, and I wanted to quote it, but basically it said that as far as the racial gap wealth and the health gap wealth, it's obviously astronomical between whites and blacks. So black people in the United States make up 13% of the population. And if you look at the the wealth gap. If you look at the wealth gap and the health gap, how healthy a society is and how wealthy a society is, if you look at that as far as the black community as the 13% of the United States, and then you look at that towards the white community, obviously that gap is huge. But there have been some studies done that said if you look within inside that 13% and you look at the skin tones and the shades, some of the gaps are actually bigger than that gap between the whites and the blacks. So let me explain kind of in English. If you look at a light-skinned person to a dark-skinned person, within that spectrum of that 13%, if you look at the spectrum from lightest to darkest of looking at all blacks, sometimes because light-skinned people are given those better opportunities, the gap between a light-skinned person and a dark-skinned person and their wealth gap and their health gap can sometimes be even bigger than you just being regularly considered black and then going against a white person. So basically, there's bigger division within our own community in some aspects than there is outside of it. And as a stat, I couldn't believe that was true, but it is. So how do we even combat this? And one, how do we combat this? And two, are we making a problem out of nothing? Because that's also another argument that people say. All these isms, whether it be they call them icks and isms, homophobic, racism, colorism, they say icks and isms. So we're always creating icks and isms. And I don't, that's not my opinion. I don't believe that to be true. because, like I always say, you can't tell someone if you're on the outside that there isn't a problem. You know what I mean? Like a white person would never understand if I say, yo, there's racism in society, and they're like, yo, racism does not exist. I've never experienced those things. I'm like, yeah, well, you're not black, you're not me. So, you know what I mean? Same. It's the same thing with colorism. Dark-skinned people say, yo, there's colorism that exists, and light-skinned people say, that's not true. That I was awarded these opportunities, you can get them too. And it obviously exists. I mean, you can look at the movie industry as well. If you look at couples, every time that there's a black couple on, and look at your favorite movie, it's the protagonist, the woman protagonist, is most likely going to be a light-skinned woman. It's very rare that it's going to be a brown-skinned or dark-skinned woman. Dark-skinned especially. And like I said, I don't know if there's, in this argument specifically, I don't know if there's some type of differentiation, because when I was trying to think of some examples yesterday of like dark-skinned women in society that are being slighted, like that are as examples. And I know that some people were saying that, like, if you look up, like, there was this dark-skinned woman that was supposed to be played, a biopic of her, and it was either Zoe Saldana, a light-skinned woman, or it was Kerry Washington, I don't remember, also a light-skinned woman, who played her. And people were saying, why didn't you just get a dark-skinned woman? But they painted her like in kind of like blackface. So that's an opportunity that was slighted from a dark-skinned woman. You could have just given her the opportunity. Another one I was thinking of was Viola Davis. Viola Davis always talks about those types of opportunities being taken away from her. She wants to get the star role, and is given to someone with fairer skin, whether that be a white woman or a light-skinned woman. And even, I think it's very important to note that even the woman that was in that Rick Ross clip, the woman that was in it, she tweeted about it and said, this is a real thing. Not the dark-skinned woman, the light-skinned woman that was on the winning opportunity side. She said, you guys like see how it happened. She said, this is something that definitely happens inside the industry. And Rick Ross talked about it a little bit, and he said that he didn't talk about it recently, he talked about it in the clip of the show, and I haven't watched the whole clip of the show, I just saw that part, but people on Twitter were saying that in the longer clip of the video, or later on, that he was saying that this girl had more sex appeal, and Rick Ross was used to working with Trina and people that kind of use their body to sell, and this woman had like different surgeries done, so she kind of gave off more of like the Cardi B vibe and things like that. So Rick Ross said that was another reason why he chose her. But that brings me to my next topic of beauty standards in the industry. They're kind of colorist as well. It's very rare that if you go look at your favorite magazines, go look on Fashion Nova's website right now. Go do whatever you want. Like, go look at the models. Or if you go to American Eagle, I'm just making something up. If you go to different websites or different industries, you'll see that the majority of the people that they're trying to make look attractive or promote their brand are lighter skinned women. They're not darker skinned women. So I mean, it's definitely a real issue, is where I'm getting at. It's not something that is being fabricated or made up. And now I know this is used as a joke, but it's still real. If you talk about, everyone always says light skins versus dark skins. Oh, if you act soft, or if you do this thing, like if you do like a certain face, or if you are more in tune with your emotions or something, you act more light skinned. But if you look more angry, or if you look or if you're more aggressive, or if you do that, oh, you act like a dark skin. People in our community use those jokes all the time. But I don't think that they understand the severity of the jokes, honestly. And everything, I mean, everything doesn't have to be taken so seriously. I get that. I understand that 100%. But at the same time, it's not like the problems don't exist. So for us to joke about them, I mean, it kind of shows the proof in the pudding. So like I said, once again, how do we combat these issues? I think that's the real question. In the industries, I know that they've been putting forth standards that you have to, not, how do I want to word this? In the industry, they've been trying to do better. Like, I know Lupita, for example. Lupita has been getting a lot of star roles and she's a dark-skinned woman. They've been trying to do better as far as putting couples together, two dark-skinned people. Normally what you see is you'll see a dark-skinned man and you'll see a light-skinned woman, and that's in every single movie. So what they're trying to do, and it has been noticeable, what they've been trying to do is put two dark-skinned people together and show a real relationship. That's just one. And like I said, this isn't a problem in just the black community either. So it's not just about, oh, how do we solve it? We're the only ones that have this issue. Like I said, this is a thing in Latin America as well. Dominicans, if Dominicans are born darker, or this is how I'll say this. When I was doing my research yesterday, in Asia and sometimes Latin America, the parents, they are hoping that they have a lighter skinned child so that their quote unquote life goes easier, because they don't want their child to be darker and looked at and looked down upon. That's how real the issue is. This is in Latin America, this is in Asia, and even some parts of Europe. If you're like a darker in India, if you're a darker Indian, you're looked at more as ugly, and they don't put like darker Indians inside magazines. This is all what I was reading from this article. And you have to be lighter skinned to be looked at as appeasing, excuse me. Same thing in Asia. They try to put the most fair-skinned Asians on their magazines as they can. And I think the most obvious example of Latin America, I think everyone knows, is Sammy Sosa. I think he's Cuban. He might be Dominican. He's Dominican. He was lightening his skin. Go look up Sammy Sosa before and after on Google, and you'll see exactly what I mean. And he denies any doing of bleaching his skin or lightening his skin. And as our capitalist society goes, they're always trying to make a buck on something. There's even lightening creams, because they know people want to be lighter skinned. You can look at Lil' Kim. Lil' Kim's skin is lighter. You can, this is a real issue and it's weird because it's kind of going backwards there. Whereas if you're very, very, if you're a white woman, for example, there have been tons of examples of white women trying to darker their skin to be like light skin. And there have been tons of examples of brown skin / dark skin women trying to lighten their skin to also be light skin. So like I said earlier, it may be from slavery, or maybe from our society becoming so mixed, so biracial. Apparently being light skinned has become the new beauty standard. And I think it's important that we try to shape our kids' minds around this. we try to do a lot of avoiding trying to talk to our kids. Like, we'll say that the easiest way to combat this is tell your kids that they're beautiful the way they are. And I think that's one thing that you should definitely do. But I think you should bring this to their attention. Look what people do when they don't feel that they're beautiful, or they feel like they don't look good. They try to change their entire appearance. And it's more than just getting a nose surgery or something like that. People are completely trying to change their skin and how they look. So what's next on that? Like, how do you combat that? Like I said, that's the real question. Is there something that they can put in all the industries? Like, for example, in the to battle not colorism but racism, to systematic racism, something that the NFL has done as far as their coaching opportunities. You must interview black head coaches or what do they want to say? Minority coaches. You must interview them before you make a decision on choosing a coach. It's a mandate. So should there be some type of mandate in all industries like that? Is that even something that's possible? Can that be done? To say, hey, if you're making a movie about blacks, you need to interview, or you need to look or cast, and interview light skins, dark skins, brown. Is that something that's even possible? And whether it be in the music industry, whether it be in the I don't want to call it acting industry, but movie industry, music, all types of media. And like I was saying about Rick Ross earlier, selling this idea of sex appeal in the music industry, and this may be me being completely biased because I couldn't think of any other examples, and I'm not picking on the light-skinned women either, but this whole idea of sex appeal in the industry, it comes with being light-skinned and then having surgeries done on your boobs and your butt. And like I said, maybe this is me being biased, I could not think of any dark-skinned women in the industry with the surgeries done that the light-skinned women have gotten. And I was picking on like Saweetie. Saweetie's like a model and a rapper, and she's light-skinned. She has those surgeries. Kalani's just got surgery. She's a light-skinned woman, just got surgery. Obviously the Nicki Minaj's, the Cardi B's. And I was trying to think of a dark-skinned woman that also has those surgeries, and I was like, maybe the closest one would be like Summer Walker, I guess. I can't think of anything, because like I said, that's the new beauty standard, quote unquote. That's what everyone's trying to go for. And I really don't. I've been pondering all night about like what solutions there are to combat this. But like I said, it's not just a black community thing. There is something way deeper than this, or way bigger than this. It's just dark-skinned people are looked at as, and then not just in the black community. I mean what I said, dark-skinned, whether you're Asian or Latin or anything other. If you have darker skin, you're looked at as aggressive. You're looked at as not approachable. And when you have lighter skin, you're looked at as soft. You're looked at as quote unquote tamed, I guess would be the word. Like, you don't look like you'll attack. And I can't say I don't know why that is, because we just talked about why that is. It goes way back before any of us were even born. It's been instilled in us. And they've even done what they call the doll test. Is they get children at about the ages from like 3 to 6, and they just show them all like give them like 3 or 4 or 5 dolls to choose from, and they all choose the lighter skinned dolls. Even black children, they don't choose the dark skinned dolls, and that shows that even as a young child, you know, the stigmatisms that, I keep using that word, I don't think that's the right word, but the stereotypes that come along with being darker skin or choosing darker skin. So it's definitely a real issue. It's not something that's just being fabricated for talk's sake. And I know I was using my mother earlier. I said she gave me examples. My mom would tell me that my great-grandfather, not her dad, but her grandfather, my great-grandfather, he was a light-skinned man, and my mom is a brown-skinned woman, and I have an aunt that's light-skinned. My family, I have all complexions in my family. My sister's light-skinned. I have a sister that's dark-skinned. I have a sister that's brown-skinned. I have all complexions in my family. So my great-grandfather, my mom would always tell me stories about how he would do favorites or play favoritism. My aunt, her younger sister, was light-skinned, and he always called her Yella, Hi Yella. And he'd be like, come here, Yella, and he would like talk to her and whatever. But my mom, she said that he would make her do like physical tasks, or it's kind of like how and I don't want to compare the two, but it's like what I said earlier. It's like with slavery. My mom would be told to like do physical tasks, like clean the house, mop, do this, and then my aunt would just sit there and like read books or things like that. And my mom said she always noticed that. And obviously that was the type of society my great-grandfather was brought up in. Thinking obviously he had to be born in what, 1900s, 1910s. So everyone, this is maybe too optimistic, but I mean I always think these thoughts too. Everyone thinks that as we get older, or as we quote unquote kick out the olds, the boomers and stuff, that all our problems will be solved. Racism will just go away. Homophobia will just go away. Like, and I'm an optimist. I think that too. I think things will get easier. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, or even if you just look at society, think about how society was in 1930, 1920. You choose whatever year you want. Go back 100 years, 200 years. Women couldn't vote. Black people couldn't vote. Black people were slaves. Black people couldn't vote either. And if you look now, obviously all those things have changed. So what we do as people, as a society, is we go, oh, well, if we wait another 50 years, then those things will change too. But I think after just seeing our 45th president and the things he was able to stir up, I think that's naive of us. I think that's very naive of us. I'll never forget that number. 74 million people voted for Donald Trump in the year 2020. 74 million people. So like I said, I think it's very naive for us to believe or to think, oh, in the next 50 years, maybe in our next lifetime, we won't be here to see it, but in our next lifetime, everything will be solved. There won't be racism, there won't be colorism, there won't be homophobia. All our world's issues, as far as people, not world hunger, not cancer and AIDS and things like that, but everyone will understand each other, because I don't know if you guys have seen these studies done or these numbers projection. It says by 2040, it's as far as, I don't think it's the world, I think it's as far as America. It might be the world though, I would have to double check, but it says that white people will be the minority, and biracial people and everyone that's the minority now will be the majority. By 2040, white people go to about 49% of being either United States population or world population, and biracial and all the minorities combined will be 51%. That has I think I'm almost positive that's a United States thing, because there's 1.3 or 1.4 people in China, and then another 1.1 in India. So yeah, I'm almost positive that's an American thing, a United States thing. But anyway, looking at those numbers, I say all this to get back to colorism. Looking at those numbers, if we're going to be a biracial and mixed society, what do biracial and mixed people look like? Think about that. Most of them, if not all of them, are lighter toned. They're light-skinned people. So I think, once again, if we think that's the quote-unquote beauty standard now, if that's what people are trying to achieve, I think in the next 20 years, 30 years, I think that will probably only elevate. It will only get worse, not better. Maybe we will do better as far as understanding each other, but I think the issues as far as us talking about one another and arguing are still going to be highly prevalent. I think people are still going to look at each other and say, oh, I'm lighter than you, I'm better. You're darker, you're ugly, you're this, you're that. And I think that's still going to be a problem. Now let me find this other article that I wanted to read. Now this one was in a teaching magazine that I found. This was actually a great article, but I just wanted to read off some of the studies that this teacher was talking about. So I mean, this is where I was talking about the doll study. It says research shows skin color bias affects perceptions and interactions in ways that are once subtle and profound. At once subtle and profound. Kenneth and Mamie Clark's famous doll study of the 1950s. Since Kenneth and Mamie Clark's famous doll study of the 1950s, researchers have known that young people of color are profoundly aware of our nation's disdain for all that is dark. Color-conscious banter between students reflects unconscious and unspoken biases, otherwise called implicit biases, that favor lighter skin. A modern example of research on colorism comes from Eddie Fergus, an assistant professor of education at New York University, who conducted a study on Latino high school males. Fergus found that Mexican and Puerto Rican males with white-looking skin are perceived as white and sometimes treated more favorably, while boys of the same ethnicity who had darker complexions are perceived as black and often experience discrimination. Not only did the boys in the study navigate the world as Mexican and Puerto Rican, but each navigated different racial expectations based on external reactions to their appearances. Despite being close or even related, people of the same ethnicity face different expectations, different realities, and potentially different educational and economic outcomes, solely based on their skin color. So when I was reading all that, and these are things that we kind of know about our society, but we kind of push them off as being regular. It's something that, like I said, is talked about in the music industry and in the media industry in itself. If you look at that study and then you apply it to, like I said, the girl Danny Lay, or the baby's new girlfriend, I believe she's a Latin person, but she has lighter skin. She's dark. She's like considered black. So it's looked at as she can be a part of the community. Not that it should be gatekept or we should be gatekeeping the community. However, I feel like there needs to be a line, and everyone feels like, yep, I have this skin, or I have this look. I look like them. I'm a part of the culture. I'm a part of it as well. And that's not just to pick on her. I mean, that's something that a lot of people do. It's kind of the, you see a lot of people talk about now. They say don't say people of color, like you say them individually. Say black, say Latin, say use their nationality, use their ethnicity, rather than just saying, oh, that's a person of color. Like, it's kind of disrespectful, grouping us all into one entity like that. And I wanted to read another one that she found. Okay, it says, and the guy that made that study, his name was Eddie Fergus. So it says, Fergus's findings are not unique. Implicit bias related to skin color within and between racial groups is so sweeping that until relatively recently, it has remained largely unquestioned and unexamined. Like I said, we kind of just push it off to the side. And such bias is not just a failure of adulthood. Developmental psychologist Margaret Beale Spencer found in a CNN-commissioned pilot study of skin color bias among U.S. children that white children attribute positive traits to lighter skin and negative traits to darker skin. And while black children also show some racial bias towards whiteness, white children in particular hold on to these prejudices more strongly as they grow older. Our children are always mirrors, says Spencer in a CNN broadcast, and what we put out there, kids report back. We are still living in a society where dark things are devalued and light things are valued. So, I mean, if that doesn't say it all, then I don't know what will. And at the same time, I think we have to, and I want to put this simply. I think the definition of the word, the definitions of the words don't help. If you want to look at any any cartoon TV show ever made, any anime, any comic book, or I'm going to get to the point. Anything that's light is looked at as shining and bright, and it means peace, and it means God. It means anything that's bright and white and light. It means God. It means the good guy. Anything that's black, that's dark, that's like even the color black is like it's looked at as nothingness. If something is black, it's empty. It's dark. It's looked at as nothing. So it doesn't help when you look at how we have portrayed dark and light. I mean, if you look at how we portray that and then look at the skin of people, and if I call you dark-skinned, and I just said dark is related to being evil and being empty and being all these negative things, then dark-skinned is kind of it kind of correlates to being evil-skinned. If I call you light-skinned, and light-skinned light is looked at as the savior, or light means bright, and it's looked at as holiness and stuff. Light kind of is looked at as positive skinned. If I say light skinned, it's positive skinned. And I think we just have to do better with the way we name things and we call things. I think people underestimate the power of the tongue. A lot of superheroes and a lot of villains or people that are in movies, they always have them. I mean, the best analogy or the best example I can give you is old westerns. And I mean this. Please go Google this. If you go look up old westerns, and they specifically wore colored hats to show which one was going to be the good guy and the bad guy. And without even you looking at it, you tell me which guy was wearing which hat. The good guy's wearing a blank colored hat, and the bad or evil guy's wearing a what colored hat. You don't have to Google it, and then you already know the answer. So if you already know that answer, and if you already know that answer, then you already know that we have a problem in our society. And it's only for those colors. If I told you that he was wearing a red hat, you'd be like, what? If I told you he was wearing a yellow hat, you'd be like, there's nothing evil about yellow. There's nothing evil about red. But when it comes to black and white, it just automatically means evil, right? Automatically means, and that's been a topic of conversation that a lot of artists bring up, and a lot of professors, a lot of people in the educational world, and even someone like Kendrick Lamar, he's brought it up, and he said, "Don't call me black no more," because if you're calling someone black, and we have, like I just said, all those definitions of the word black, all those negative meanings, you can only understand how the power of the tongue is going to reflect those meanings as well. So I think that's a perfect note to end it on. So I'm gonna end it right there. I'm ending about 2 minutes early. Like I said, to recap as we always do, this was episode 10, colorism and how it's all around you. And we talked about first by defining colorism and how it differentiates from something like racism. Racism is when people of different ethnicities, someone like, let's say from Europe, that's Irish, they look at a black person and they say, you're this, this, and that. That's racism. You guys are from different backgrounds. However, if two Irish people were to talk about each other and say, I'm better than you because I'm darker than you, or I'm better than you because I'm lighter than you, that's colorism within that same community. It's a huge issue within a lot of communities all around the world, not just the black community. What else am I going to call it? Not in the African community, African American. I think African American is its own problem. I've never been to Africa. Someone is Mexican American if they come from Mexico and live in America. That makes them Mexican American. I can't be African American. I've never been to Africa. So I'm at a standstill. Do I call myself African American? Do I call myself black? So in the black community, it's a huge issue with colorism because we have a wide variety of complexions. But it's not only in the black community, it's in the Asian community, it's in the Indian community, it's in the Latin community, the European community, all communities. People that are lighter are looked at as easygoing, as soft, as approachable, as smarter. People that are darker are looked at as aggressive, dumber, and they don't have the same standard of beauty as someone that's lighter skinned. So, and this is reflected all across media. It's reflected all across our social lives, where people are quote unquote bickering over, oh, you're light skins act like this and dark skins act like this. And I gave some examples of colorism, and gave a few examples of how we can combat this problem and if this problem will ever be solved. And I hope it can be, and I hope it will be, but I guess only time will tell, right? All right, so I want to thank everybody that showed up to watch the show live, and I also want to thank everyone that's watching this on your different media platforms at home. Today is January 25th, Monday, and this will end episode 10, all right? You guys have a beautiful day.